Forget the Netflix drama. Forget Oprah. The real reason the royals fear Meghan Markle has nothing to do with interviews and everything to do with the circles she moved in before she ever became a duchess. People thought Ghislaine Maxwell had nothing left to say. After all this time in that cold, claustrophobic prison cell, most assumed she'd sit quietly and let the world forget her. But then she opened her mouth, leaned back on that metal cot, and dropped a name nobody expected. Not a politician, not a royal, not another billionaire. She said, Meghan Markle. The story of how Meghan's name ended up in the most dangerous legal files on the planet and why huge chunks of testimony were violently redacted is one you won't want to miss. Before we dive into the missing hours, the code name Flower, and the yacht connections the palace once buried, it would mean the world to us here at the Ruby Report if you would hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. You won't want to miss a single detail of this unfolding mystery. When Maxwell's private conversations leaked, everyone expected explosions, names, timelines, dirty details. But instead of clarity, the world got a stack of documents that looked like they'd been attacked by a blackout marker on caffeine. Entire hours evaporated. Paragraphs turned into thick black bars. Answers were wiped clean while the leading questions sat untouched, mocking anyone who tried to piece them together. Officials insisted the redactions were standard privacy measures, but the excuse didn't fit. Maxwell has no privacy left. Epstein certainly doesn't. So why were these particular sections erased so violently? Why did 12 hours of testimony disappear like they'd never existed? Because the redactions weren't random. They were precise, surgical. Someone wasn't hiding what happened. They were hiding who was connected. And sitting right in the middle of those missing blocks was a name that had never been associated with this world publicly, Meghan Markle. Not mentioned once by accident, but repeatedly and always in the parts that vanished. These weren't throwaway references. They were detailed, situational mentions that show someone wasn't hovering near the story. They were inside the rooms where it happened. Someone out there decided the public wasn't ready for the version of Meghan that existed before she became a duchess. The way those pages were erased tells you one thing. Her past wasn't just complicated, it was dangerous to reveal. According to Maxwell, Meghan didn't always move through those circles under her real name. In certain private environments, spaces far removed from Hollywood or fame, she was reportedly known by one simple word, Flower. This wasn't a playful nickname. It wasn't a stage alias. It was a code name used in rooms where anonymity wasn't optional, but required. Maxwell claimed Flower was used repeatedly, the kind of name people don't forget because it turns up consistently at certain exclusive yacht events and private dinners. And somewhere within that world, Flower allegedly had her own profile, an actual private resume. Not for casting directors, but for gatekeepers. A dossier used to introduce her to people with influence, explaining who she was, what she offered, and why she was being circulated. This was a world Meghan has never publicly admitted being a part of, a world where she learned how wealth operates quietly. Long before she was a duchess, Meghan allegedly crossed paths with the ecosystem surrounding Prince Andrew. Not romantically, but she was present in the same curated environments he frequented. The thing people don't understand about Andrew's circles is that nothing was casual. These weren't random house parties. These were events shaped by billionaire hosts, political sharks, and power players who knew exactly who to invite and why. To end up on those lists, you didn't need to be famous. You needed to be useful, intriguing, or strategically placed. According to Maxwell, Meghan was exactly that. She blended in, took notes, observed the hierarchy, and watched how power moved from one handshake to the next. And when Meghan reappeared years later in the royal sphere, the shock wasn't universal. Some people, like Andrew's circle, didn't act surprised at all. They acted like they'd seen her before. Because they had. Every story like this has a figure who isn't loud, but who knows everything. In this one, that person is Sarah Ferguson, Duchess of York. Most people believe Meghan met Fergie politely right before the wedding, that classic teach me how to curtsy moment. Cute story, very royal, very staged. But people inside elite circles insist the two had crossed paths much earlier. back when Meghan was showing up in the same exclusive environments Maxwell and Epstein's networks intersected with. Sarah was no stranger to these circles. She moved through them with ease, knowing the unwritten rules and the whispered warnings. So when Meghan resurfaced years later, now attached to Harry, Sarah didn't react with surprise. She reacted with caution. Because Fergie knew exactly what kind of rooms Meghan had been in before, and exactly which names had been connected to her. The royal family fears pattern recognition, and Sarah recognized the pattern because she'd seen it before. If Maxwell's world was the murky undercurrent no one dared to acknowledge, then Soho House was the polished, seductive surface everyone pretended was harmless. And standing behind those rooms was Ron Burkle, the billionaire connected to everyone who mattered, including Maxwell. Which brings us to April 2015. Soho House Istanbul opens its doors. The guest list is immaculate. Prince Harry appears. And Meghan? She's there too. Rumors swirled instantly that this wasn't fate, it was orchestrated. Some whispered that Meghan had been placed into that orbit by friends who knew exactly what kind of rooms she'd navigated before as Flower. Within a year, Meghan's public image sharpened like a PR miracle. Suddenly humanitarian, suddenly global, suddenly royal adjacent. No one climbs that fast without someone powerful behind the curtain. Most people assumed the redactions in Maxwell's leaked interviews were designed to protect Meghan. That theory collapses when you look closer. These censors weren't protecting Meghan. They were protecting the men she once stood in the same rooms with. Donors, royals, financiers, billionaires, names that would detonate if paired with any part of Maxwell's story. Meghan wasn't the threat. Meghan was the liability, the witness who had seen too much. She saw the faces people desperately want erased from history. Then she married a prince. She became untouchable, unpredictable, potentially dangerous. Because now she possesses something far more valuable than scandal, memory. That's why entire hours of Maxwell's testimony evaporated into black ink. Not because Meghan did something, but because her presence threatens those who did. This is the real fracture between William and Harry. It cuts deeper than cameras or headlines. William's distrust isn't rooted in personality, it's rooted in proximity. Meghan's ties to Andrew's old circles are why William reportedly issued a devastating ultimatum at Balmoral. Either Andrew appears or the heir does, but not both. With that gesture, William sent the message the palace had been whispering for years. There will be no contamination of the crown's future by the ghosts of its past. Every headline-worthy scandal begins long before the public notices. In Meghan's case, the spark allegedly ignited on a yacht. Not the glamorous kind influencers brag about, but the kind where the guest list is handwritten and the faces on board could shift the global stock market with a phone call. It was there she allegedly became Flower. It was there she got her first glimpse into how power really works. Now that Maxwell has started speaking, the careful silence protecting these connections is cracking. The real question is no longer if Meghan's past will resurface, but how much will escape the blackout marker. What did those 12 missing hours really contain? And why are so many powerful people terrified of those details becoming public? Because once a storm reaches this size, silence isn't protection. It's an admission.